I was asked to do a piece about Black History Month, and inspired by the contribution of Marcus Rashford, etc., in the European Championships, I started to research black footballers. I thought I'd do a piece on the first black footballers, maybe move on to the struggle of women footballers, black women footballers, to make it in the present day professional game. I started my research and I found out about a chap called Andrew Watson. And I wanted to spend some time on him, not least because he played his football in Scotland after studying philosophy, mathematics and civil engineering at Glasgow University. He was part of the famous Scottish team that thrashed England 5-1. But I found out a much more interesting story. A much more interesting story. And that story is that of Walter Tull. His father came from Barbados and he worked as a carpenter. His mother came from Folkestone and sadly passed away when Walter was 7. His father remarried again, but tragically 2 years later he too died. As a result, Walter and his brother Edward were sent to an orphanage in Bethnal Green. Walter was training to be a printer, and it turned out he was a very good footballer. His talents were soon discovered by Tottenham Hotspur, and they signed him. He was paid what in those days was a grand sum, £10 a week. He was only the second black man to play professional football in Britain. He played for Tottenham until 1910, when he was transferred to Northampton Town for a huge signing-on fee. That's a measure of his worth. He played for Northampton 110 times, and in 1914, Glasgow Rangers, the team I supported in my youth, began negotiations with Northampton to sign him. And then the war broke out. Walter Tull immediately abandoned his football career and joined the British Army. His talents were soon recognised and he was quickly promoted to the rank of sergeant. He took part in the Somme Offensive, one of the major battles of World War I. In the course of that campaign, he developed trench fever and was sent home to recover. He had by this time made such an impression that he was sent to officer training school, and in 1917 he was commissioned as a British Army officer with the rank of second lieutenant. As such, he was one of the first black officers in the British Army. Walter Tull was then sent to the Italian front, and on May 25th, 1918, he was ordered to lead his men on an attack on the German trenches. Sadly, he was killed in action. In order to commemorate the life of this great man, a memorial was erected in Nottingham and a garden of rest dedicated to the man who put country above career. Written are the words, "Through his actions, W.D.J. Tull ridiculed the barriers of ignorance that tried to deny people of colour equality with their contemporaries. Walter Tull had shown black and white men and women can live together as equals." This great life allowed me to discover an organisation called Black Poppy Rose, which is dedicated to remembering the sacrifice and service that Britain has enjoyed from people of colour.
The Black Poppy Rose was founded in 2010 and was designed to be a symbol of remembrance for the African, Black, West Indian, Pacific Islanders' contributions to history since the 16th century. So currently, all over the world, all we do is learn about, a slavery narrative, but the idea is for us to have a symbol to remember the contributions made by our peoples to build the empires that we're living in today, to provide empowerment for our young people to be able to understand how their people have attributed to the development of the world. We will remember.
So you're clutching.
I'm clutching.
You're clutching away at the Black Poppy Rose. So you've got different ones. So break it down.
Well, we've got the fabric.
Mm-hmm.
So this is so black is for the people, the rose and the poppy itself, and then we have them in pairs because people like them in pairs. So some people say, the black isn't quite. You can't see it; it doesn't pop out.
Yes,
Okay.
But it's a symbol. So as we're going on, what I want is for our children to decide what it looks like, because it's all well and good us doing things, but they're not going to be interested in a few years' time. They've got to be a part of what we're doing. The conversation must include them now. So although I've started it, I will not go on to end this. This will be something that our children and the futures go on to end. How do we want to be represented? But then we have the pair, because people like it, the two of them together. But what I also did, we've got the different regiments. So we've got the West African Frontier Force. So we've got Nigeria, Ghana, Gambia and Sierra Leone.
And they contributed about 100,000 soldiers, around about 100,000 soldiers over World War I and II, right?
Yes, because that's a lot of uniforms. So there couldn't have been more men than that, because it was a lot of uniforms.
Yeah,
but
at least,
what
yeah,
people
at least
don't talk about
100,000.
is the millions of porters and labourers that were used as a part of the war, because they didn't have to uniform them, they didn't have to pay them.
Right.
And they would be the carrying forces, carrying ammunition, collecting the bodies from the war fronts, carrying water, cooking, foods, any of the soldiers' training gears, things like that, they would be used. And many of them died. Millions of them died. And again, those numbers can't be accounted for.
Right.
This is another reason why we have the Black Poppy Rose, because when we normally think of war, we just think about the soldiers and the servicemen, whereas there's a wider narrative. We've got it for the British West Indies Regiment.
And they contributed at least 11,000
At least.
In World War II.
In World War One.
World War One?
Yeah.
And World War
I'm
II.
learning on this part, yeah.
So and World War II, because I know that World War II from the Caribbean, my understanding was that there was a minimum at least 11,000.
At least, yes, because with World War One there was 10,600.
Okay.
So we round that up to 11, and
To
then
11.
World War II we have 11.
11. Okay. And they, because my mum actually remembers. Oh yes. People they come a Stratton, and people come back with their medal. They come back with their medal.
Yes.
The G, ladies and gentlemen, the G, medal.
they've made is Mary Seacole, who some of you may have heard of, the Victorian Jamaican nurse who went to the Crimean War. But she's up there looking down on us, saying, I wasn't the only black Victorian in England. There were many, many others. And the same is true of Arthur Tull, who some of you may have heard of, the black British soldier who became an officer in the First World War, who's up there looking down on us saying, I wasn't the only black British soldier in the First World War, there were many others. And it's that really, in a nutshell, what motivates us to do.
The game franchise Call of Duty has also recognised the contribution and has introduced us to Arthur Kingsley, a British paratrooper who is part of the Special Forces squad in the latest edition of the game, Vanguard. Arthur Kingsley is based on a real-life paratrooper, Sidney Cornell. Sergeant Sidney Cornell was a paratrooper in the 6th Airborne Division who won the Distinguished Conduct Medal for his bravery in the Second World War, and was the first black soldier to be dropped behind enemy lines on D-Day. His job was running messages between military HQs when radio communications failed. This was one of the most dangerous jobs during the war. His records noted, space does not permit a record of all his feats, as he distinguished himself in practically every action. Sadly, Sergeant Cornell was killed in action aged 30, but his story lives on forever in the film Paratrooper and this game.
A true king fights side by side with his soldiers, his reign defined by courage. Leadership and loyalty sustain each other, each relying on the other's sacrifice. A covenant forged in trust and strengthened by empathy. Like a true monarch, Arthur Kingsley doesn't rule, he leads.